You didn't stop being yourself all at once. It wasn't dramatic. There was no announcement. No moment of fire or rebellion. Just a series of quiet decisions you didn't even realize you were making. You started laughing at jokes that didn't feel funny, nodding when you disagreed, wearing clothes that weren't yours, adopting values you never questioned, because they were easier to accept than to challenge. Bit by bit, without knowing it, you disappeared. Not into silence, but into noise, into performance, into likability, into belonging at any cost. And the world, clever as it is, rewarded you for it. It said, "You're so mature now. You're finally growing up. This is what being normal looks like." But inside, something began to ache. Something small, like a whisper behind your smile. Because while the world was applauding your mask, your soul was watching you disappear. We think losing ourselves is loud, a collapse, a scream, a crisis. But more often, it's a soft betrayal, a quiet forgetting, the kind of forgetting that feels like becoming better, but really just means becoming invisible. Pause here. Can you remember when it started? Was it the first time someone laughed at your sensitivity? The moment your creativity got labeled weird? The day you realized being honest came with consequences? Go there. Because that moment, that fracture, wasn't about weakness. It was about survival. You didn't betray yourself because you wanted to. You did it because the world taught you that the cost of authenticity was isolation. And so, you chose connection, even if it meant abandonment of yourself. You became who they could understand, who they could accept, who they could love, and you forgot what it felt like to be known by you. Not judged, not curated, not liked, but known. And that forgetting has a cost. Not judged, not curated, not liked, but known. And that forgetting has a cost. It's not just anxiety, not just burnout, not just the quiet fear that you're faking your whole life. It's grief. Grief for the person you were, before the world convinced you to become someone else. But here's the truth. You never fully lost them. They're not gone. Just buried. Beneath the masks, the roles, the noise. And if you listen closely, you might still hear them. In your resistance, in your exhaustion, in your longing for something you can't quite name. That longing isn't a flaw. It's a signal. It's your real self knocking from beneath the surface, asking to come home. You begin to feel it, not as panic, but as an ache, a subtle longing, not for what's next, but for what's real, for who you were before the forgetting began. Authenticity is not something you achieve. It is something you remember. It is not a skill you master. It is a homecoming. A return to a place within yourself that you never truly left, only forgot. But coming home requires courage, because the world has taught you to fear your real self, to fear the parts of you that don't fit the template, to fear the passions that don't monetize, to fear the questions that don't have neat answers, to fear the passions that don't monetize, to fear the questions that don't have neat answers. And so, to remember who you are, you must first unlearn who you were trained to be. You must untangle the web of expectations, comparisons, and invisible obligations. You must confront a painful truth. Much of what you call your life may not truly be yours. Many of your dreams were planted, not chosen. Many of your fears were inherited, not discovered. Many of your desires were engineered, not awakened. This realization is not tidy. It is not comfortable. It is a kind of grief. You grieve for the years spent climbing ladders you didn't build. You grieve for the parts of yourself abandoned to fit in. You grieve for the vast, uncharted landscapes within you. Landscapes paved over by noise, by conditioning, by survival. But grief is not the end. It is the threshold. On the other side of grief is clarity. Clarity about what matters to you. Not what should matter. Not what looks impressive. But what resonates like a bell struck deep inside your bones. Clarity about what you want to build. Not for applause, not for validation, but for fulfillment. Clarity about who you are. Not the polished version shaped for approval, but the wild, untamed, unfinished soul you've always been. From that clarity, a new life can emerge. Not a perfect life. Not an easy life. But a real life. A life stitched not from borrowed scripts, but from your own authentic longings. A life that may look less glamorous from the outside, but feels infinitely more alive from the inside. Because a life built from authenticity doesn't glitter. It glows. It doesn't shout. It hums. It doesn't crave validation. It radiates truth. In a world addicted to noise and spectacle, a quiet life lived in truth is the loudest rebellion of all. And the first step toward that rebellion is the simple, terrifying, liberating act of remembering. Authenticity is costly. Not in loud, cinematic ways, but in the quiet, aching ones. It doesn't ask you to shout who you are. It asks you to whisper it when no one's listening. It asks you to disappoint people you love, to sit through their confusion, their silence, their judgment, to feel the chill of their unmet expectations brushing against your skin, and to stay, to not run back into the mask just because they frown. Because the moment you stop performing, the moment you let the roles fall away, the world gets uncomfortable. It doesn't know how to hold the real you, the you that isn't pleasing, the you that says no, the you that stops nodding. And so it pushes back. They may not say it outright, but you'll feel it. In the tone. In the way their eyes scan for the version they remember. In the guilt they offer wrapped in concern. You've changed. You're different. Are you sure you're okay? But what they really mean is, you're no longer predictable. No longer easy to manage. No longer keeping the peace at your own expense. And that unsettles them. Because your truth rattles the scaffolding of their comfort. Your courage to be real reminds them of the cost they didn't pay. And so, you must choose comfort or truth, approval or authenticity, belonging or becoming. You cannot have both. You cannot live fully and be universally accepted. You cannot honor your soul and stay lovable to everyone. Because the system was never built for the whole of you. It profits from your confusion. It praises your obedience. It rewards the version of you that fits into templates, not truths. So if you truly want to remember who you are, you must be willing to walk alone for a while, to lose the chorus, To sit in the silence when applause no longer comes. To feel the ache of not being gotten. To be misunderstood, dismissed, maybe even forgotten. Not because you're trying to be difficult, but because you've stopped being available for who you're not. This isn't rebellion. This is return. Loyalty to self will cost you. Shallow acceptance, conditional belonging, comfort rooted in distortion. But in return, you gain something rare, something quietly holy. You gain you, not a performance, not a projection, not a carefully curated collage, but the unedited presence of your own breath. And maybe after the grief, after the ache of letting go, you'll start to feel something stir. The hum, the soft, golden hum of your own truth, filling the empty spaces they left behind. And from that hum, if you're lucky, you'll start to find others. Not many, but a few. A few who also chose real over easy, truth over comfort, silence over noise. They'll meet you without armor, and you'll recognize them, not by what they say, but by what they see. And in that moment, you'll know. Every step through loneliness was a path, leading home. Authenticity is not loud. It doesn't shout. It doesn't fight for the spotlight. It's the hum beneath the noise. The quiet pull inward when everything else demands you look out. It's not a costume you put on. It's the skin you forgot you had. It doesn't arrive with trumpets or declarations. It arrives in stillness, in the pause between distractions, in the ache that says, this isn't who I am. You recognize it not by how impressive it looks, but by how honest it feels. A conversation that leaves you more alive, not more anxious. A task that nourishes your soul, not just fills a slot in your resume. A moment that brings you back to yourself, not pushes you further from it. Small moments, small choices, but when repeated, they shape a different kind of life. A life with weight, with gravity. A life not performed from the edges, but lived from the center. But here's the quiet tragedy. The world is designed to keep you off center, to keep you spinning, to keep you distracted from your own hum. It bombards you with identities to try on, templates to mimic, algorithms to follow. It tells you what to like, what to fear, what to become. It praises consumption over creation, imitation over integrity, reaction over reflection. And if you don't resist, not loudly, but intentionally, you drift. You drift away from yourself, not in a dramatic collapse, but slowly, drip by drip, scroll by scroll. Yes, by compromised, yes. Until you wake up and realize you don't remember what your own voice sounds like, what your own values feel like, what it means to choose instead of comply. This is the slow death, not of body, but of soul. And the worst part? It feels normal, because everyone around you is drowning the same way. But there is another path, not easier, but real. And it begins with refusal, refusing to echo, refusing to perform, refusing to outsource your identity to crowds that never knew your name. It begins with silence, the kind of silence that isn't empty, but full of the faint beat of your own truth, the steady pulse beneath the static. It begins with small acts of rebellion, saying no when every part of you fears disapproval, choosing slow, deep present over speed and applause, choosing being over appearing. Because the real war isn't on the outside. It never was. The war is within, between the self you were trained to become and the self you quietly remember being. And you will not win it in noise. You will not win it through applause. You will win it in stillness, in clarity, in the raw, quiet decision to come back home. The real tragedy of losing yourself isn't just forgetting who you are. It's forgetting that you ever had a choice. You slip from one expectation to the next, one role into another, one mask into many. You say yes when your body says no. You laugh when your soul stays silent. You chase when all you want is to stop. And slowly, so slowly, you forget how it began. Until even asking, "What do I want?" feels absurd, childish, dangerous. Because now your identity is stitched into speed, into motion, into the momentum of staying busy, just to feel alive. You no longer know where the performance ends and where your presence begins. To stop now, to question, to listen, would threaten the whole structure you've built. And so, you keep moving. You keep adapting, shifting, consuming, producing, pretending that this noise is purpose, that exhaustion is evidence of meaning, that being overwhelmed is proof that you matter. Even when something inside you aches, quietly, daily, louder. But here's the truth. No one teaches you. That ache is not weakness. It is not a flaw. It is not a failure. It is the signal. The ancient, primal signal that your soul is suffocating, buried under layers of stimulation, expectation, and disconnection. It's your truth, trying to breathe through the cracks in your life. But most people silence the signal. They numb it with dopamine, with applause, with aesthetics. They call it success. They call it maturity. They call it real life. But real life, when stripped of the spectacle, does not demand your betrayal. It invites you back to your center, back to your breath, back to the slow, sacred art of becoming, not performing. This is why remembering who you are is not just psychological, it's spiritual. It's a quiet rebellion against the great sleep of modern life. A refusal to die while your body is still moving. A decision, radical in its simplicity, to stop living on the edge of your own existence. Because a full, raw, radiant life won't be found in scrolls or statistics. It won't be handed to you in followers or promotions. It lives in presence, in slowness, in the terrifying, liberating act of being fully yourself, in a world that profits from your absence. And it starts with one question, a simple one, but not an easy one. If you stopped performing for just one day, if you stopped chasing and started listening, what would remain? Who would remain? And would you recognize them? Or would they feel like a stranger you've been aching to meet your entire life? The true cost of forgetting yourself is not just personal, it is cultural, it is existential, because when enough people forget who they are, when enough souls trade truth for templates, something begins to break, not just in them, but in the world they shape. We become a culture of echoes, not voices. A society of reactions, not reflections. A civilization where everyone performs and no one is present. We celebrate surface over substance, speed over thought, conformity over courage. We scroll instead of study. We binge instead of build. We respond endlessly but rarely reflect, and slowly, almost invisibly, we begin to forget that a different way was ever possible. This erosion of depth is not neutral. It is fatal, because without depth, there is no meaning. Without silence, there is no self. Without slowness, there is no soul. You cannot know yourself in noise. You cannot grow while constantly reacting. You cannot create when your inner stillness has been colonized by interruption. This is not just a personal crisis. It's a collective one. The death of authenticity is also the death of thought. They are not separate tragedies. They are twin symptoms of the same sickness. A sickness of speed, of spectacle, of forgetting. But here's the quiet truth. You were not made to live like this. You were not born to perform yourself into exhaustion. You were born to be, to wonder, to choose. So if you wish to remember, if you wish to return, you must reclaim your depth. You must fight for silence. You must protect the inner space the world has trained you to abandon. And yes, it will feel strange. It will feel like stepping out of rhythm, because the rhythm is broken. But the future will not belong to those who scroll the fastest, who shout the loudest, who impress the most. It will belong to those who can still stop, still feel, still think. So before you move on, ask yourself, not casually, not for a moment, but deeply, honestly, alone. When was the last time you truly thought, without scrolling, without reacting, without performing, just sat with a question and let it echo all the way down to where your real self still waits?